She walked into the ocean like she had nothing left to lose, and pulling her out changed everything I thought I knew about love, life, and myself. Hey there, and welcome to a story that's been sitting heavy in my memory for years. It was September 19, 1998, a Saturday, and our end-of-season cookout was in full swing. The grill was hot, the smell of charred meat filled the salty air, and cold beers were going around for those of us not riding later. Parked just beyond the dunes, tucked into the sand like steel horses bedding down for the night, were a dozen or so motorcycles. This wasn't an official bike club, not really. More like a tight-knit crew of folks bound by a shared love of the open road and roaring engines. Every fall we'd gather like this, sort of a last hurrah before the colder months pushed us off the roads. The lifeguards had already packed up and gone home, and the tide had rolled in closer than usual, nudging the crowd up near the dunes. That's when I saw her for the first time. I go by Jake Caldwell, and I guess you could say I've always had a knack for spotting when something's not quite right. And that woman? She was out of place in every way. She stood there alone, wrapped up tight in a heavy overcoat, thick sweater underneath, and a long denim skirt that brushed the tops of her boots. It was a warm autumn evening, almost summery, people still strolling around in swimsuits or tank tops. But her? She looked like she was dressed for a snowstorm. I don't know what it was exactly, something in the way she carried herself maybe, but I felt pulled toward her. So I walked over, offered a gentle smile, and asked if she wanted to join our little gathering. She glanced up at me, and that's when it hit me, there was something behind those tired, sunken eyes. Something hollow. Like she hadn't slept in days, or maybe just hadn't wanted to. She politely turned down the offer and started walking further down the beach, away from the music and the firelight. I didn't push. I just nodded and went back to the group. Of course the guys noticed. They always notice. And leave it to Brandon, loud, cocky, always ready with a jab, to throw the first comment my way. "Come on, Jake," he said, slinging his arm around my shoulders. "You can't be that lonely. Trying to chat up a bag lady now?" I didn't laugh. "She's not a bag lady," I said quietly. "Yeah, she looks rough. But those clothes? They're not cheap. There's something else going on with her. She looks lost." That was the difference between Brandon and me. He saw appearances. I saw people. Brandon, Leonard Brandon, if you knew him Monday through Friday, was a clean-cut stockbroker by day, sporting sharp suits and fancy watches. But come the weekend he ditched the tie for black leathers and a bandana. His clients expected a certain image, but the real Brandon came alive on two wheels. He also happened to manage my investments. But more importantly, he was my friend. He chuckled and nudged me. "She's not your responsibility, man. Come on, let's find you someone who doesn't look like she walked out of a storm drain." I played along, danced a little, even shared a few laughs with some of the regulars. But truthfully, my mind kept drifting back to the woman down the beach. She hadn't moved much. Just sat there, still and small in the sand, as the sun dipped low and the fire started to die out. When the last of the bikes fired up and the crew began disappearing into the dark, I grabbed a trash bag, tossed the remnants of the party into the bed of my pickup, and told the few remaining folks I'd lock up the site. And then, with only the moonlight to guide me, I made my way across the dunes, back toward her. She looked like she was waiting, maybe for someone or maybe just for something to finally pull her out of whatever darkness she'd wandered into. The waves pounded the shore in the distance, glowing faintly white under the pale wash of moonlight. As the tide slowly crept back, I noticed her stand up. Then she started walking, straight toward the ocean. A tight knot formed in my stomach. My worst fear, the one I couldn't quite name earlier, was now playing out right in front of me. That vacant stare I saw in her eyes? I recognized it because I'd seen it once before. 2 years back, I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror during the lowest point of my life, and I saw that exact same look. She didn't hesitate as she stepped closer to the water. Didn't stop to remove her coat or skirt. Just kept going. I broke into a run, sand spraying behind me as I moved, my boots sinking into the soft ground with every step. My heart was pounding, part panic, part something deeper. I didn't know her, not really. But I couldn't just let her walk into the sea like that. By the time I reached the shoreline, the waves were already swirling around her knees, soaking through her heavy denim skirt and making it cling to her legs. I called out to her, shouting her way, hoping, praying she'd turn around. But she didn't. Either she didn't hear me or she didn't care. The water climbed to her thighs as I kicked off my boots and waded in. The cold gripped my legs like ice, but I pushed forward, the current trying to shove me back with every step. She was almost up to her waist when I finally caught up. Just as she leaned forward, ready to let the tide take her, I grabbed her from behind, wrapping my arms tight around her waist. She let out a sharp, startled scream and began to thrash in my grip, trying to pull away. "I'm sorry," I yelled, barely able to hear my own voice over the crashing surf. "I can't let you do this." "Leave me alone," she screamed back, turning her head toward me with wild, tear-filled eyes. "I want to die. If we go any further, we're both not coming back," I shouted, tightening my grip as the pull of the tide tried to drag us deeper. "Is that what you want? To take me with you?" She didn't answer right away, just kept trying to wriggle free. The waves crashed harder, rising up and slapping against our sides. I turned her around so I could see her face, her shoulders shaking, her teeth chattering. "I don't want to live anymore," she whispered. "Then let me be selfish," I said, breathless. "If you walk into that ocean, I'm going after you. And I'm not a strong swimmer. This tide's running fast. There's a good chance we both drown." Her lips parted to say something, but nothing came out. Instead, she broke down. Her hands flew to her mouth, and then the sobs came, deep, broken sounds that tore right through me. I didn't say anything more. I just held her tight. "You're freezing," I said after a few moments. "Come on. You can wear my jeans and sweatshirt. I've got a spare jacket in the truck." She nodded slowly, still trembling. We made our way back through the wet sand in silence, her bare feet dragging. At the tailgate of my pickup, I reached inside and handed her a folded pair of jeans and a hoodie. She looked up at me, eyes still puffy from crying. Then, hesitantly, she reached for the button on her skirt. I turned my back, not wanting to embarrass her further. "Go ahead," I said gently. "I won't look." She was quiet for a few seconds before saying, "It's okay. You can turn around now." When I did, I couldn't help it, I laughed. Not out of mockery, but out of pure, unexpected joy at seeing something so human in the middle of everything else. The jeans were ridiculously oversized. She had to clutch the waistband with both hands just to keep them from sliding down to her ankles. "You're a little short for my wardrobe," I chuckled, and for the first time she cracked a smile. We didn't say much after that. I helped her into the passenger seat, closed the door gently behind her, then walked around and climbed in on the driver's side. I shifted the truck into gear and turned toward the road, watching her out of the corner of my eye. After a while, I said softly, "We're almost there." We pulled into a parking space in front of a small building tucked just off the main drag, an old community center that doubled as a crisis shelter after hours. I hopped out, walked around, and opened the passenger door. "We're here," I said, offering my hand. "Come on, Helen." That was the first time I said her name out loud. She didn't flinch. She just looked up at the faded lettering on the glass door, then back at me. "I thought you said fish and chips," Helen said, hesitating on the sidewalk. "I've heard of this place. Isn't this that fancy spot run by that chef on TV?" Jake laughed. "You're thinking of the restaurant he opened across town. This is just his chip shop. Same name, very different vibe. Trust me, it's no five-star dining experience. They know me here." She looked down at herself and frowned. "Jake, I'm barefoot. My shoes got swept away at the beach. And I'm still wearing your jeans, which are falling off me every 2 steps. I can't walk into a public place like this." He smiled gently and offered her his arm. "Relax. These folks have seen me walk in after a long ride, half covered in road dust. You're fine. Besides, I think you've earned a warm meal tonight." They went inside, and a few minutes later, with a brown paper bag of wrapped fish and thick-cut chips between them, they headed back to Jake's house. She was quiet in the truck on the way back, her body sagging into the seat, the day's exhaustion catching up to her. Jake figured she'd perk up once they pulled into the driveway. But when he switched off the engine and looked over, Helen was still asleep, curled slightly toward the door, her face finally at peace. He got out, circled around, and carefully opened her door. She stirred but didn't wake. With careful arms, he lifted her from the seat and carried her up to the guest bedroom, the soft creak of the stairs the only sound in the quiet house. Once inside, he laid her gently on the bed. She didn't even flinch. Jake untied the rope she'd used as a makeshift belt and carefully pulled off the oversized jeans he'd lent her, leaving her wrapped in his hoodie. He covered her with the spare blanket, left the door cracked, and made his way downstairs. A couple of hours later, she stirred. The house was quiet, dim, safe. Jake was still awake, sipping tea in the living room when he heard the soft sound of the floor creaking above him. A few moments later, she appeared in the doorway, now wearing one of his long shirts that hung past her knees. Her wet hair was towel-dried but still damp, and her eyes looked clearer, though still heavy. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked softly. She nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. "I guess I woke up and panicked. Didn't recognize where I was." He gestured for her to sit and she did, folding her legs beneath her on the edge of the couch. I saw you undressed me, she said carefully. Thank you for not. Jake cut her off with a gentle wave of his hand. I didn't touch anything but the jeans, Helen. Your undergarments were left alone. Your skirt's in the wash. It was soaked. She offered a faint, embarrassed smile, a pink hue coloring her cheeks. Thanks. I appreciate it, and I don't suppose you've got anything I can sleep in? He shrugged. No clean pajamas, I'm afraid. Haven't worn 'em since I was about 12. But there's a few of my old long shirts hanging in the wardrobe, and some t-shirts in the second drawer down. Pick whatever's comfortable. She nodded and started to rise when something caught her eye. Her gaze landed on a small jewelry box on the shelf beside the couch. She walked over and gently picked up a ring that sat atop it, a simple gold band topped with a single diamond that caught the light even in the shadows. I see you're married, she said softly. Jake looked down for a second, then back at her. Not anymore, he replied. She passed away 5 years ago. Helen went quiet, her fingers resting on the edge of the shelf. You want to call your husband? He asked gently. Just let him know where you are? At the mention of the word husband, Helen's shoulders caved inward, and tears began to slide down her cheeks again. Jake understood instantly. He stood and walked over, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. So, it's him, isn't it? He asked quietly. He's the reason. She nodded, unable to speak at first. He's divorcing me, she finally whispered. Jake pulled a chair over and sat beside her. Then that's what all this was about. Helen wiped her eyes with the sleeve of the shirt. It feels like my world just crumbled. I didn't know where else to go. He didn't try to say anything wise. He just waited until her breathing steadied, holding her hands between his own. There was a girl at the beach party last night, he said finally. Short, blonde, sharp as a blade. Her name's Angie. She's one of the best solicitors around here. She helped my sister through her divorce. I could call her if you want. I don't know what I want, Helen murmured. You might not want the divorce, but you can't stop it. Angie can make sure you don't get blindsided. You don't have to fight, just don't get left behind. She nodded slowly, staring into nothing. There's just one thing I haven't figured out, she said. What's that? She looked down at the oversized shirt she was wearing and gave a small, sad smile. How am I ever going to wear this again without seeing you in it? Jake chuckled softly, the warmth of it filling the space between them. Well, I've got a whole drawer of shirts. You can keep that one. She laughed lightly, and it was the first time he'd seen something close to joy on her face. Now, he said, standing, go finish drying your hair, pick out another shirt, and let's head into Nookie. We'll get you some real clothes. And shoes. She grinned, eyes lighting up with tired amusement. Shoes. Jake raised an eyebrow. What? I'm just imagining my old ones floating out at sea, probably passing some fisherman's boat like a weird little offering. He laughed again, and this time she joined him fully. For the first time that night, things felt just a little more normal. She helped me see it clearly, Helen said, staring out the window as the morning sun filtered through the blinds. Douglas, my husband, didn't leave me just because she could give him children. She paused, then turned to face Jake, her voice steadier now. He didn't even know that until after he'd already started cheating on me. It wasn't about that, not really. And Angie, she helped me realize it wasn't my fault. That I didn't drive him away. He just made his choice. Jake didn't say anything right away. He just listened, letting the silence be her comfort. Helen glanced at him and added with a faint smile, by the way, Angie told me if I really wanted to get to know you, I should ask about someone named Wellard. So, Jake, who exactly is Wellard? Jake let out a small laugh, rubbing the back of his neck. Wellard's me. It's a nickname that stuck after a pretty wild day at the St. Paul's Carnival in Bristol. Helen raised an eyebrow. That's quite a name. How on earth did that happen? He chuckled. It's kind of a long story. I was on duty that day, back when I still wore the badge. Some guy went off his head, started swinging at people in the crowd. Turned out he'd just gotten out of prison 2 days earlier, after putting his girlfriend in the hospital. Real nasty business. Helen's face tightened. What happened? Jake nodded slowly. We managed to stop him before he hurt anyone else, but not before he got a few punches in. Broke 2 of my ribs. As he was cuffed, he looked me straight in the eye, gripped my hand and said, Respect man, you as well, hard for an old guy, innit? Helen burst out laughing. No way. Jake grinned. Next time I turned up at a bike meet, I pulled off my helmet and the whole crowd started chanting it, Wellard. Well, Ard. You know bikers. Once a nickname catches, it's yours for life. I love that, Helen said softly, still smiling. I wanted to know more about you. I've been curious. He met her eyes. And now that you know? She hesitated. I'm not sure. But last night I woke up in a stranger's home wearing your clothes, vulnerable, scared, and you didn't take advantage of me. Part of me thought, maybe you just didn't find me attractive. She looked into his eyes, searching for something. Maybe a flicker of desire, maybe reassurance. What she really wanted, what she longed for, was to feel wanted. Say. Jake's voice was low and steady. Helen, if I'd crossed that line last night, I'd have lost your respect. And probably your trust too. I turned my back because I didn't want you to feel how much I was affected. And trust me, I was affected. Her breath caught and she smiled gently. I felt it. Even though you said nothing. There was a quiet stillness between them then, something honest and raw. She shifted closer to him on the couch, her head resting lightly against his shoulder. If I stay here, she whispered, you might not have to wait very long. He turned toward her, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek. You can stay as long as you need, he replied, pressing a soft kiss to her forehead. A moment passed and then she tilted her head, teasing, I think I should take a shower. Jake smiled. You know where it is. She grinned. Is there room for two? The shower was warm and quiet. No rush, no expectations. Just the comfort of two people finally letting their guards down. When they returned to the bedroom, they curled up under the blankets, Helen tucked close into Jake's chest. And for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel alone. Before drifting off, she whispered, I still have to go back. Tie up loose ends. Say the hard goodbyes. Jake nodded. I know. But this doesn't have to be the end. It feels more like a beginning, she said. It can be, he replied gently. If that's what you want. She looked up at him, eyes soft and searching. You already know what I want. Jake kissed the top of her head and held her closer, not needing to say another word. I guess I have to lose you for a while, Jake said softly, watching the horizon through the windshield. And maybe that's just something I have to accept. Neither of them said much after that. That night, before parting ways, they shared one more moment, tender, quiet, and full of everything unspoken. There was no performance, no pressure. Just two people finding comfort in each other's presence. And somehow, it felt even more honest than the night before. By morning the air had shifted. It wasn't cold, but it carried the weight of goodbye. Jake drove Helen to the train station in silence, one hand on the wheel, the other resting beside hers on the console. She didn't pull away. They pulled into the lot just as the London train was pulling out of sight. The next one wouldn't arrive for another hour. They didn't talk about what to do with the time. They just stayed there, side by side in the cab of the truck, letting the moment stretch, not quite ready for it to end. I could have sold the company back then, Jake said quietly, almost to himself. Walked away with more money than I knew what to do with. Helen looked at him, surprised by the sudden shift. But I didn't, he continued. People depended on me. And I wanted something to pass on to my son one day. Something I built. He leaned back, eyes fixed on the dashboard. Thing is, I didn't realize I was giving everything to the business and nothing to my family. They got what was left of me, not the best of me. Helen reached for his hand, resting hers gently over it. I landed the biggest deal of my life during that time, he said. Contracted to build firmware for those new digital set-top boxes, real cutting-edge stuff. It was going to change everything. He gave a short laugh, but there was no joy in it. I remember driving home that night high as a kite, rehearsing how I'd tell everyone. Thought I'd pull into the driveway, tell Jackie and the boys, and we'd pop a bottle to celebrate the future. He paused. But I walked into something else entirely. Jake's voice dropped. Two of my partners, Tom and Ray, were waiting for me at the house. They didn't even let me sit down. Said I was spending too much, stretching the company too thin. That it wasn't about me anymore. I didn't even see it coming. His grip on the steering wheel tightened. I looked at Tom and said, we'd be a hell of a lot more profitable if we weren't bankrolling all your little vanity projects. Then I added, more as a hunch than anything, and this wouldn't have anything to do with you sleeping with my wife, would it? He looked over at Helen, his jaw tight. He flinched. Just enough. That's when I knew. Helen's face twisted with sympathy. Jackie didn't even try to deny it. She just looked at me and said, your spending was out of control. We had to put a stop to it, for the company, for everyone. Jake laughed bitterly. They called it business. Strictly business. He looked out the window again. Tom held out his right hand, Some fake olive branch, and that was his mistake. I'm left-handed. Helen's eyes widened. Oh no. I shook his hand, then drove my left fist into his face. He hit the floor, bleeding, stunned. I looked at Jackie and asked if she planned on marrying him. She said yes. As soon as the divorce is final. Just like that. Jake sighed, the weight of it all still lingering. I told her one thing. I said, just remember, when a man marries his mistress, he creates a vacancy. There was silence in the truck. Helen looked at him, not with pity but with understanding. And then very gently she said, that wasn't your fault either. Jake looked over, and for the first time in that moment, his eyes softened. But before he could reply, something strange happened. Suddenly the world shifted. He wasn't in the truck anymore. He was standing on a shoreline, the sun high in a cloudless sky. The water was still, quiet. And there she was. A woman, tall, elegant, with long dark hair cascading down her back, stood just ahead in a white one-piece swimsuit. She turned to face him, her expression calm but intense. This isn't the way, Jake, she said, her voice echoing like it came from a place beyond sound. Turn around. Let's go back. He blinked, confused. What? What's the point? There's nothing left to go back to. There's always a reason, she replied, stepping closer. There are things you're still meant to do. People you haven't met yet. This is not your time. He squinted. How do you know my name? I know because I've been where you are. And because you're not finished yet. Jake's voice cracked. But I'm so tired. She smiled softly. Then rest. But don't give up. The tide will always come back in, but you have to choose whether to stand firm or let it carry you away. Jake took a breath. And then suddenly, just like that, he was back in the truck. Helen was still sitting beside him, eyes closed, her head resting on his shoulder. And he knew. He wasn't ready to walk away from life. Not yet. I have to save you, the woman said. Then her voice echoed again, closer this time. Turn around, come back. Jake blinked. Panic surged in his chest. The light overhead flicked on suddenly, and as he sat upright in the bed, disoriented, he saw her eyes, hazel and familiar, and it all hit him at once like a crashing wave. Oh God, he whispered. It wasn't a dream, was it? Vanessa, still curled beside him in bed, took his chin gently in her hand and pressed her lips softly to his. No, Jake, she said. It wasn't a dream. It all happened. But that doesn't mean it has to be as bad as you're thinking. He looked at her, really looked at her. The warmth in her face, the softness in her eyes. And yet, Vanessa, he murmured, you're beautiful. Any man would be lucky to wake up next to you, but you're not the woman I love. She didn't flinch. Her voice stayed steady. Are you still in love with her? Jake hesitated. I don't know. Maybe it's not just about love. Maybe it's about what I felt when I was with her, something I hadn't felt in a long time. Vanessa gave him a small, understanding smile. The way you looked after me, how protective you were. If that's what you do for someone you've only just met, then I can only imagine what you'd give to someone you truly care for. She reached for the edge of the covers. Take my word for it, it's her loss. Jake didn't know what to say. Vanessa got up, stretched, and turned back with a playful grin. Now, how about some breakfast? And maybe a swim down at the beach? But Jake's mind was somewhere else. Another time. Another face. He felt a soft nudge on his arm. I said, you were with her, weren't you? It was Helen's voice this time, clear and calm. Jake looked up, startled for a moment as the fog in his mind cleared. They were sitting on the back deck, warm mugs of coffee in hand, the distant hush of the sea drifting in. Yes, he said quietly. I was with Vanessa. For almost 6 weeks. He watched Helen's expression, but she didn't seem angry, only thoughtful. We'd go to the beach, swim, lie in the sun. Nights were quiet. Sometimes not so quiet, he added with a small smile, trying to soften the confession. Helen nodded slowly. It's okay. That was before you met me. Jake appreciated her grace, though he wasn't sure he deserved it. But that's when things started to get strange. Helen turned to him, curious. Strange how? He leaned forward, his hands loosely wrapped around the coffee mug. It started on the train ride home. I bought a newspaper to catch up on the world, wanted to feel like myself again. But something was off. The front page had stories I remembered from the day everything fell apart, stuff about the company, the scandal, the fallout. He looked at her, brows furrowed. But according to the paper, it had only been 10 days since it happened. 10. Helen tilted her head. Wait. I thought you said you were away for 6 weeks? I was, Jake replied. At least I thought I was. That's what it felt like. 6 weeks of living, breathing, waking up every day in a different world. But the paper told me otherwise. I panicked, he admitted. Started searching the train for the vendor who sold it to me. Found him. Confronted him. Told him he'd given me an old issue. You know what he said? Helen shook her head. He looked me dead in the eyes and said, "That's today's paper, sir?" Like I was the crazy one. He stared down at his hands. I didn't know what to make of it. Time, reality, everything felt warped. Helen put her hand on his. Then I got a call I wasn't expecting. It was from Jackie. Helen blinked. Your ex-wife. I didn't answer, Jake said. Didn't need to. That was a door that didn't deserve to be opened again. Instead, he'd called his old solicitor, Stuart Mackenzie, the man who'd been there from the beginning back when Jake first started the company. He trusted Stuart. Always had. The line connected quickly. Jake. Stuart's voice came through, sounding relieved. It's good to hear from you. How are you? I'm okay, Stuart. Been away for a few days, needed time to clear my head. Stuart was quiet for a moment, then said, I still can't believe how they did this to you. I tried to stop it, but Jackie was determined. And Tom? Well, Tom had his own plans. Jake leaned back, exhaling deeply. It was strange. Coming home to a world that hadn't changed, while he had. Like time had folded in on itself. But something inside him whispered, this isn't the end. It might be the beginning, if you choose it to be. He turned toward Helen. She was watching him with the kind of gaze that held no judgment. Just a quiet invitation. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. I don't think I can stay here anymore, Janet said, her voice cracking on the other end of the phone. I'll need to find another job. Janet, don't do anything rash, I told her, shifting the phone to my other ear. If you need a reference, I'll tell them you were the best secretary I ever had. That got her crying. I could hear the tears catching in her throat. Oh, sir. I'm going to miss you so much. My chest tightened. Janet had stuck with me through it all, the growth, the pressure, the collapse. How about this? I offered. Let me take you to lunch tomorrow. I'll pick you up and we'll eat somewhere quiet. Then I can hand the car over to you. It's yours now. You don't have to do that. I want to, I interrupted gently. It's yours. She paused, then chuckled through her tears. Okay. But I swear, if that smug woman from finance gives me one more look while telling me your wife is doing just fine, I might throw my coffee at her. She's got a thing for you, Jake. Just saying. I laughed, more from exhaustion than amusement. Over the next few days, I began clearing out the remnants of what used to be my home. Truth is, I didn't want most of it. Just my desk chair, a few boxes of old files, and the oak dresser that used to belong to my mother. Everything else? Jackie had picked it out. I put my things into storage, packed up my clothes, and waited for the locksmith and the guys from the charity shop. They came to haul away the furniture. Anything of value I didn't keep went to the open market. If Hamilton wanted it, he could pay retail like everyone else. When it came to the company, I gave the order, sell all my shares. Quietly. Strategically. Stuart coordinated the sale, instructed the brokers to offload them piece by piece to keep the price stable. Too fast and the market would panic. Too slow and word would get out. Either way, I wanted out. Funny thing, Simon came crawling back. Stuart told me he'd reached out again with another offer for the shares. This time I told him to go pound sand. But the strangest part of all of it? It wasn't business. It was time. I found myself walking down to my sister's place, thinking I'd drop by, only to find her in shock. Said the house I'd claimed to have been living in just last week had been torn down a year ago. That can't be, I told her. I was there. You weren't in that house, Jake. You must be confused. There's only ever been one house on that beach. Another mystery. First, 6 weeks had become 10 days. Now, a house I stayed in, eaten breakfast in, shared nights in, hadn't existed in over a year. I needed answers. So I went to the local paper. Talked to an editor I knew. Told him my story. Later that afternoon, Helen met me in one of the shops downtown. She came out of the fitting room, smiled, and said, The shop assistant just told me what a good man you are. I chuckled. Do you think she's watching over us? Helen's smile softened. If she's the one who brought you to me, I need to thank her. Maybe she didn't bring you to me, I said, but she made sure I was there when you needed someone. Then, like something out of an old movie, the public address system crackled overhead, announcing the London train's imminent arrival. We walked to the platform together, hand in hand. When it was time to say goodbye, we kissed, like a couple of teenagers who didn't care who was watching. Are you really coming back? I asked. You bet I am, Helen said. I've got some things to sort out. Might take a little while, but I'll be back. She boarded, and I stood there long after the train had disappeared down the tracks. A few days later, Jackie showed up at my door. Not uninvited, not entirely unexpected. So, I said, leaning against the kitchen counter, are you here to look at the house or tell me something? She gave a weak smile. 3 bedrooms, right? Or is it 4 now? Still 3. But you didn't drive all this way to talk real estate. What do you want, Jackie? I watched the coffee filter machine rumble to life behind her. The kitchen filled with the scent of something warm and familiar. She hesitated. Then softly, it's you I want. I froze mid-step, eyes widening, mouth slightly open. I'm sorry, what? She laughed suddenly, covering her mouth. No, I didn't mean like that. I'm not asking you to come back to me. Though God knows if I thought it would work, maybe I would. I stayed quiet. She straightened. The company's in trouble. You probably saw it coming. The board, the bank, they're nervous. They won't loan us another penny unless we show them a proper plan for diversification. We've tried, but no one believes we've got the experience to pull it off. So you need someone with credibility. Yes, she said simply. We need you. What does Simon think about this? He's fine with it. But honestly, it doesn't matter. The board wants you. The bank wants you. And what if I don't want them? Jackie's voice lowered. Jake, if it weren't for you, none of this would have ever happened. We all know that. And I'm not here for me. I'm here for them. From behind her, another voice chimed in, Helen, stepping through the doorway. Well, she said, if this isn't awkward. Jackie turned around, startled, then smiled politely. Jake. He just smiled. He'd stopped trying to predict how his life was supposed to unfold. But for the first time in a long time, he was excited to see where it would go. I told you I have friends here, Helen said, standing tall, eyes bright with conviction. Real friends. People who actually care about me. Jake nodded, proud of her. She'd come a long way from the shaken woman who'd walked into the sea weeks ago. There was strength in her voice now, purpose. Now, she added, narrowing her gaze, why don't you tell me the whole story? Jake smiled. You sure you want the unedited version? I think I can handle it. Well, he said, stretching out in his chair, you're right on both counts. I'm not going to tell her, and yes, it is exactly what you're thinking. A grin tugged at her lips. You really are a terrible man. Jake laughed. Last time I saw something that unexpected, it was when my ex's baby came out brown. That explained more than 3 years of marriage ever did. Helen gasped, then burst out laughing. Oh my God. And you? Jake said, giving her a teasing look. You getting pregnant? Just made things even more fun. Like you said, she winked, I'm a very naughty woman. They walked together into the lunchroom side by side. Some of the employees of Cockburn Software Solutions looked up from their meals, eyes lingering on Jake, the man with the beard sitting at the back of the room. A few of them tilted their heads. He looked familiar, like someone who used to have his name on the building. Jake stood. For those who don't recognize me, he began, voice clear, my name's Jake. And I'm here to welcome you to the next chapter. He paused, letting the weight of the moment settle. We'll be starting fresh, with new leadership, new energy. You're all welcome to stay, and I hope most of you do. But that choice will be yours. A murmur ran through the room. We'll offer a generous relocation package, Helen added, stepping up beside him. And this building? It's being sold along with the 2 company flats. Mr. Hamilton and his assistant will be moving out. Somewhere near the door, Simon Hamilton looked like he was chewing nails. Jake caught his eye and, for a moment, extended his right hand. Simon paused. For a moment he looked like he might take it. But then he remembered the last time he shook Jake's hand, and turned around, walking out without a word. Jake just chuckled and sat at his old desk, stretching out his arms, running his hands over the familiar worn leather top. Janet knocked gently on the door before stepping in. I just wanted to say, it's so good to see you back where you belong, sir. Jake smiled. It's good to be back. I miss this place. She smiled warmly. I bet your last employer wasn't thrilled to see you go. Well, she said, chuckling, they did offer me a pretty tempting raise. But I knew where I needed to be. A few hours later, Jake and Helen stood quietly in the corner office, watching the afternoon sun spill across the floor. That's when it happened. A breeze swept through the room, though no windows were open. They turned as one, to the far side of the room. And there she was, Vanessa. She stood near the edge of the light, that same soft smile on her face. Her long hair moved slightly as if caught by the wind, and her eyes shimmered with something Jake couldn't name. "Vanessa," Jake and Helen said in unison. She smiled again. Then, lifting her hand to her lips, she blew them a kiss, just once, and was gone. They looked at each other, both wide-eyed and still. "You saw her too, didn't you?" Helen whispered. Jake nodded slowly. "She was real. That wasn't a dream." "If she wasn't," Helen murmured, "then we just had the same dream." Jake stepped closer to the spot where Vanessa had stood, something pulling at his chest. I think she was saying goodbye." Helen rested her head lightly against his shoulder. "Maybe she believes we don't need her anymore." Jake turned, wrapping his arm around her waist. "Then I'll need a new guardian angel." She smiled and pressed a kiss to his cheek. "Only if you'll be mine."